Are you an e-commerce brand working with a 3PL or a fulfillment center or maybe thinking about doing so? Well, one of the largest cost centers for you as a brand is going to be shipping costs. Not necessarily the labor around that, the picking and the packing, all of that, but the true cost of shipping. Now, 3PLs have a huge advantage here. A lot of times they're able to get cheaper shipping rates because of all the volume they have combined across all their different customers. But for you as a brand, what sort of tactics can you use to negotiate the best possible shipping rates to help save you money in the long term? In this video, we're going to walk through a bunch of different strategies that you can put into play when negotiating rates with your fulfillment provider to help get you a lower cost overall. My name is Brennan and I own and operate a fulfillment center or e-commerce based 3PL in Portland, Oregon. And before that, we started and ran and operated our own e-commerce brands, which we still do today. So I've been on the brand side. I've worked with a couple other 3PLs before we started our own, and now on the 3PL side, I work with brands all the time to help them save money on shipping. I've got a good idea of the ways that 3PLs are able to save money for brands, as well as some of the strategies that brands can approach a 3PL with to be most successful and get the most savings out of it. You can do as much cost optimization as you want across the whole business, but at the end of the day, depending on the size and the weight of your product, shipping costs is probably going to be a large line item. So instead of trying to avoid it completely, the way I like to think about it are how can you be most efficient to save as much money as possible? And I think it's so good to get this set up correctly at first when maybe you're smaller, because then as you scale, sure, there's some changes that might need to be made, but you're setting yourself up for success by getting this done correctly the first time, because as you scale up and have to focus on other things, if you can know that your shipping rates are locked in at the right thing, you're not gonna have to worry that you're possibly bleeding money in that sort of area. So first up, I think it's really important to understand where a 3PL fits into this picture and how they fit into your rates. So typically, there are two ways to purchase postage through a 3PL. Most of the time, the 3PL is going to purchase it on their accounts because they have better rates because of the volume that they ship, and then you get billed for it at the end of the month. There are also scenarios where you can plug in your own UPS or FedEx account, and that's totally doable as well, which is almost kind of a different scenario because then you're negotiating directly with carriers. And in this video, I'm really going to talk more about how to approach a 3PL to negotiate shipping rates, but the other scenario does still exist. Now, when talking to a 3PL, you have to understand first off, what are your most valuable things to the 3PL? Typically, that's going to be the order volume and how big of a customer you are to them in comparison to their other ones. If I'm a customer that's shipping 10,000 orders a month and working with a 3PL that typically only serves 1,000, 2,000 order a month customers, I've got a little bit more leverage than I might vice versa. So trying to get an understanding of where you fit into the puzzle for that 3PL, I think is super helpful to understand. And on the 3PL side, obviously we want to give our customers the best shipping rates, but if you're shipping 10,000 orders a month versus 2,000, we're going to be able to get you better rates because we're able to go back to our FedEx and our UPS reps and go negotiate better rates with more volume. And it's a bit of a flywheel in that sense. And so as the 3PL owner, we're always trying to get better rates, but to do that, we need more order volume. And so if we have a customer come on that ships a lot of order volume, we might actually be able to discount below what we even currently have because we know we can go get better rates from our reps. Another thing to understand when pricing with 3PLs is what kind of 3PL are they? If they are a 3PL that solely does e-commerce based products and they're lightweight, you're probably not going to want to go negotiate pricing with them on furniture, for example. Just make sure that you are working inside of the right niche of 3PL. There are certainly some bigger 3PLs that will do everything, and there are some smaller ones who will do very specific things. We, as an example, mainly stick to like sub 10-pound products that are all e-commerce based. We do some wholesale and B2B, but it is almost all e-commerce based, and that's solely for the reason that our rates are most optimized in that area. And so for customers that are doing stuff outside of that, we're really not going to be able to save them much money. So let's jump into the different kind of tactics and whatnot that I would actually approach the situation with. So again, this depends if you're just getting pricing and you haven't actually moved into the 3PL, maybe you're already working with the 3PL, but they all kind of still apply. So first off, like I said, understand your volume and where you sit in terms of volume compared to their other customers. You're not going to know this exactly, but you'll get a pretty good idea by taking a couple reference calls with other customers, and you can just straight up ask your 3PL, like, hey, what kind of a customer are we in comparison to your other ones? So that's point one. Second point is understand how complex your process is, maybe compared to their other customers. So for example, if I'm a company that is selling a skincare product, I have one SKU and I ship 1,000 a day. That is very different and way easier than an apparel customer who might have 40 products and each one has 6 sizes and 4 colors. So understanding how complex of a customer you are for that 3PL and also just how easy you are to work with, these are all things that kind of go into the negotiation process that from the 3PL side are 100% considered when putting these pricing rates together. Another thing just related to this, is the 3PL already shipping a bunch of similar products? If so, they're probably very familiar with how those rates work, where their rates are most effective, etc. And the last thing I'll mention is understanding your package dimensions. So this is one thing that I think is overlooked a ton. A lot of times carriers will give pricing around cubic, meaning they'll price it out based off of the size of the package rather than the weight. This has like a weight limit, but usually it's like 30 pounds. And so for most of the lightweight e-commerce stuff, it doesn't matter. So one question I always think is important to ask is talking to your 3PL about, are you offering cubic pricing? Do you support cubic pricing? Or is this all weight-based? And the reason for that is a lot of the time the cubic is going to end up being cheaper. There have been so many scenarios that I've seen where it's cheaper to ship like a 10-pound 8x6x4 box than it would be to ship a 3-pound 12x12x12 box. It's all based around dimensions and how all the carriers price their things out, and it's ever changing, but it's just an important question to ask because usually there's a lot of savings to be had there, especially if they are only doing weight-based. And cubic is still relatively new. It was introduced in the last 5 or so years, I would say, by USPS, and some of the other carriers have started crafting agreements around that. But now, what does the actual pricing for these rates look like? We could get into pricing in another video where you talk about pick and pack and storage and all of that stuff, but just rates. Typically, you're gonna get charged the cost of the postage from every 3PL. Everyone else prices it out differently though. Some people charge based off of weight and zone, some people charge just a flat rate. So every 3PL is just gonna price a little bit differently. I know for us, we typically give customers a rate sheet of, okay, if this package is 6 pounds and it's going to zone 5, here's what it's gonna cost. There are also models that make it even simpler where it says any package from 1 to 3 pounds across any zone is going to be $10 and 5 pounds to 7 pounds is going to be 15, whatever it is, like a much more simplified version. So everyone just kind of their own. It depends on a lot of the economics of that specific 3PL, where their other locations are, what kind of services are they shipping, those sorts of things. There's just so many different factors, which is why every 3PL's pricing is so different, which for you as the brand sucks because when you're trying to compare a bunch of these, it's really difficult to go apples to apples. And so one thing I always recommend is ask the 3PL if you're price quoting them out against a couple other ones, ask them all, give them 30 days of shipping data and say, hey, can you apply not only the postage fees, but all the fees to this so you can get an idea at the end of the month what your actual cost will look like. And it'll give you a much kind of comparison against all of them, because trying to just match up rate sheets to see, oh, well, they charge 10 cents for this and 15 cents for that. No 3PL is ever gonna match up like that. I wish they did. It would make life a whole lot easier for everyone, but they're just not going to. And so I always ask for a 30-day sample of data for them to apply their pricing to it. I think it's a much more accurate analysis and to compare all of them. Now, one other thing I will warn you about is surcharges. And this is usually like the biggest surprise. And understanding, am I going to get billed for surcharges later or not, is super important. So for us as a 3PL, our postage prices, the way that they work, we don't actually bill back those surcharges. So if we ship a package today and in 3 weeks we get billed another 15 cents for whatever reason from the carrier, we're not gonna try to nickel and dime that back to the customer. We try to build our postage rates so that you know what you're paying up front, and a lot of 3PLs do that. There's definitely some that also apply surcharges back and forth. There's not a better or worse way of doing it. Everyone just does this a little bit differently, but it's something to ask your 3PL that you're working with, because I've seen customers get surprised where they ship, they get a bill at the end of the month, and then 2 months later they end up with another $1,000 in fees. And they're like, wait, where did this come from? And the 3PL goes, oh, well, we got billed for this on your packages, which is why we gave you such cheap rates in the first place.
Why?
This is business.
This is my sweat.
I know, but I did business.
Shut up.
So those are the things that I would be paying attention to if I was a brand, either potentially looking at working with a 3PL or a fulfillment center, or maybe I'm already working with one and want to go back and renegotiate my rates. The first of the year is always a good time to do that. I know us as the 3PL always go back to our customers and are like, hey, here's some changes we're going to make to the pricing structure of everything based off of the last year. Hopefully that was helpful. If it was, feel free to drop us a comment with any other questions, give us a like and a subscribe, it helps us out. And if you are an e-commerce brand looking for a 3PL, we own and operate one, like I mentioned, out of Portland, Oregon. We support mainly growing e-commerce brands that ship sub 10-pound products. So if that's you and you're looking for one, feel free to check out our website or drop us an email, and we'll probably hop on the phone with me and we can talk through what you're looking for, and maybe we're a fit, maybe we're not, and I can help refer you to someone who might be a better fit. So with all that said, hopefully it was helpful, and until then, happy shipping.